Welcome to the Performance Enhancing Podcast. It's like steroids for your brain. A podcast for people that want the best info, but just don't have the time. Get your podcast fix with the Cliff Notes versions of your favorite podcasts. No fluff, just the actionable golden nuggets. Having this much knowledge at your fingertips should be downright illegal. So get ready for another dose of Performance Enhancing Podcast with Satori Prime. Here's your host, Ilan Ferdman.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Performance Enhancing Podcast with your host, Ilan Ferdman of Satori Prime. We are about to delve into part 3 of my interview with Ramdas. If you haven't heard the first 2 parts, make sure you go back and do that. In part 1, just a brilliant story of what is going through after a tragedy that he experienced. In part 2, we talked about goal setting, the 5-minute journal, etc. Now, in this part, we cover a lot of different bases, but just to give you a couple of highlights, one of the things we talk about is the difference between chasing money or chasing dollars and your why, which is a really interesting conversation because for those of you that listen to the first 2 parts, you know that UJ and I are in a really high-level mastermind, and we were just kind of discussing where people are at and people that we work with and consult, etc. So it's a really interesting conversation. He also shares with us, he has his own podcast, and I actually asked him to share some of the most interesting guests and stories that he's had and lessons that he learned from his guests. So that was really cool. And we actually start with a really inspirational, goosebump type story about one of the people that UJ had worked with, which really goes to prove his why and the strength of it. And then obviously we end with, the cliche of, I wish I knew then what I know now, which UJ had a very interesting and unique answer, which I'd never quite heard before. So enjoy this last part of my interview with UJ Ramdas. I agree. So let's kind of take it down to reality for you right now. Obviously, your world kind of got thrown into, upside down, topsy-turvy, as my son says, topsy-turvy. But give people an idea, like what's your why, what's your vision? Because I think that'll also crystallize everything that's happened and that we've spoken about and make it really palatable. And then we'll talk about like your 6 months.
Sure. So I'll give you like a real story.
Yeah, please.
And a sense of like what this means for me. So a couple of years ago, I used to work in a clinic to help people change behavior. And the reason, it was incredibly fulfilling for me is because here you get to interact with real people, with real stuff, right? I didn't work with people that were clinically diagnosed because that just is not my league.
Yeah.
Regular people, regular stuff, right? And here comes in a guy. He's about 36 years old, and very likable guy. And he says, here's my issue. I have difficulty writing in front of people. It sounds like a really weird thing, problem to have, but I have a phobia of writing in front of people.
Wow. Okay.
And how it started was when he immigrated to Canada when he was a kid. He went to a barber shop and someone asked him to write on a piece of paper, and he couldn't write English at the time. And he was petrified, and he tried to scribble something, and they embarrassed him by saying, "Oh, you don't know how to write English?" Right? And that just stuck with him. It stuck with him for his entire life. And he could only write in private. And I asked him, why is this important to you? Because any time someone worked with me, the why was important to me because I could leverage their why to help them get their goal.
Yep.
And I asked him, so why is this important to you? And he said, this has helped me back in so many ways. I could earn more. I want to provide more for my daughters. They're young, and I don't want to be that father who couldn't overcome his own problems because I want to set an example for my kids. And I thought, that really hit home for me. It really hit home for me, and I did everything I could over the next 2 weeks to really look at what I could do for this man. And the end of 2 weeks, I did a couple of interventions on him that I looked at and looked promising. And I gave him a pen and a paper. And I said, right, I think you can do it. And he started writing, and he kept writing. He kept writing on this piece of paper. He's like, he's shaking with emotion because this is the first time that he can remember that he's doing this. And he kept writing, and I have goosebumps.
Yeah, me too.
Right now. Incredible. I still have that piece of paper.
Wow.
Because, I did university or school, whatever. I have specialized honors. I don't give a shit. I don't even know where that piece of paper is. I have this piece of paper this man wrote stuff on because this means more to me than anything else. It means that human beings have the ability to change behavior. It means I have the ability to help people make that shift, create that in themselves.
Wow.
Just like that experience to me, if I'm a journalist, something that helps people in their own time, in their own way, make their change. In a certain way, it helps you, helps other people, helps people that you meet across the restaurant sometimes.
Yeah.
Influence their life, change behavior in a way that makes their life better. And for me, that's my why. That's what I do, and that's what drives me forward. And that's what's going to continue to drive me forward.
That is such a beautiful story. And I just want to point out to everyone listening, do you get how everything we spoke about before, 5-minute journal, what he's up to in life, all of it is stemmed from that same driving force of causing that shift in people's lives. That's all I hear. Everything you're committed to, everything you studied, everything you've done, the way you interact with your family now, that you've used even the motorcycle accident as a vehicle, no pun intended, to actually drive that vision home. Use that to create a shift in your family, in your friends, in your surroundings. It's just when you get who you are and what your talent is and what you came here to do, you turn on that light, it can never be turned off because you can hide from it, you can argue with it, whatever. The world will keep putting you in situations to show you that this is what you need to be doing.
Yeah.
That is such a beautiful story. Gorgeous.
Thank you.
Gorgeous.
Like I said, the why is the most important thing.
Yeah.
And you know what? Some of your listeners and your clients who are looking to make money, it's incredible how many people chase the dollar and end up incredibly unhappy.
Yeah.
Incredibly unhappy. And there are enough people that you and I know who chase the dollar as well and end up incredibly happy and wealthy at the same time.
Yeah.
The difference is the people that follow the why are able to really figure out, what gives them that feeling. That feeling of having made that shift is unbelievable. It's beyond anything that words can explain. It's when a human being looks in the other human being's eyes and knows that something's changed.
Yeah.
And knows that there's been an incredible shift in consciousness in the way they move forward in life.
Yeah.
And for that, all you can say is thank you for the experience of having been there.
And then that becomes the thing you chase. I actually think that the people that we surround ourselves with, if I had to say it, I would say it differently. I think most of us have given up on chasing money. We've just realized the more value we deliver and the more impact we have in the world with our gifts. Money just naturally. Money today is, if we were hunter-gatherers back in the day, okay, and you had this gift, right, to change consciousness, okay, then if you did that for someone, then they would gift you with food and shelter and wives and whatever, right? Today, we don't do that. Money is that exchange. So I think money has become, the more money in your bank account, for most, I'm obviously we can come up with anomalies because there's a lot of douchebags who do horrible things, but we don't surround ourselves with those people.
Yeah.
Most of the people, and all the ones that I surround myself with, are those that their bank accounts grow because of the value they're contributing to the world. And that is the way that people thank them for having contributed and changed their lives.
Yeah. Actually, I have a question for you.
Absolutely.
What's your why?
My why is very, very simple, and I boiled it down to one sentence. My mission is to break down the walls to what people believe is possible in their lives.
Very cool.
Yeah. And that's kind of like taken on a lot of different aspects. Like, did I ever think that we would be like world-class leaders in Facebook marketing? Fuck no. Like, but you know what? We get through our masterminds to actually engage people in what's important to them. And finance obviously is a massive arena for people. Like, you handle people's finances, it somehow unlocks their creativity and unlocks their ability to do the things they love. So it's just funny how it's kind of shifted to that. But, we've done personal development work and all that stuff, but that's what lights me up. Like, that's my dollar is getting that email from someone like, you changed my life. Or, we had this amazing story. A woman was going through our course and her daughter was going through it, and this 13-year-old built a business. And I was like,
awesome.
that is literally why, that email is why I do what I do.
That's great.
Yeah. It's interesting. We all kind of have in this mastermind, I don't know if you've noticed, like, we all have very similar visions and whys.
Yeah.
They're all worded somewhat differently, but like global impact is I think what everyone's shooting for, which is amazing.
That's going to happen.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, it's amazing. I love these kind of conversations. So you have your own show, Mental Edge, which is absolutely amazing.
Thank you.
Give people some insight about, because it's about the same why. Like, this is no, she's obviously contributing that to the world. But has there been a guest or like some interaction or something that you've had either recently or that really sticks out in your mind as like, wow, that was just an amazing conversation, I took so much from it, something like that you could just give people a little taste of?
Yeah, so this is actually somebody I believe you've had on your show as well, Ari Mazel.
Oh, God, I love Ari. I'm actually going to his house to hang out with his wife and kids in about 2 weeks.
Oh, great. So tell him I say hi.
Yeah, he's amazing.
Yeah, I'm going to see him at the Bulletproof Conference in a couple of months. And I should be all good for them. And so I did a conference with them, and this was some time ago. And one of the things, the reason I actually brought him on was because he had overcome something called Crohn's disease.
Yes.
Which I'm sure you know, and your listeners might know. But for those who don't, it's an incredibly painful disease of the gut, where it's difficult, it's painful, it's embarrassing. It's just a nightmare. And how he overcame it is the story of when life hits you with something. When you meet it and you exceed it, you change everything. Yeah. And for him, he had to do a couple of things. He had to change the way he ate. That was the one thing. But to match what life threw at him, he had to get into extreme sports because he had to show his body what pain was.
Wow.
And he had to show his body that he could beat his body into submission. And he wasn't going to let pain stop him from being who he wanted to be. And yes, extreme endurance sports is dangerous for the body in the long term. And you might know he's not doing as much of that anymore.
Yeah.
Because he's convinced his body.
Yeah, his body's got it.
He's got it. But that concept of going, that's when that came to me. That's when that concept really, really hit me. Was there's no such thing as submitting to life. There's no such thing. There's always you can always match life. You can always exceed whatever is given to you. And he's a great story. He's just a great guy in general.
Yeah.
The conversations we had, I've really enjoyed.
Yeah.
So,
I had one of those too with him. He's like such an efficiency master. It's almost like crazy what he's been able to do in his life.
Yeah. There's another one. So one of the people that I really admire in life is Robert Greene. He's the author of 40 Laws of Power. And I was really happy to interview him. And one of the things that he mentioned was, he's had a hard life. For about 20 odd years, he struggled to find out what was his thing. He wanted to get into writing. He bumbled about in journalism, didn't work, did like 20 odd jobs, worked in graveyards at private eye, all kinds of stuff. And the humility and the dedication to his craft. To me, he's a true master of what he does. Oh, he wrote the book, Mastery. That's a whole different topic. But he's a true master. And to be able to hear his routine, hear the way he approaches his work, to hear how he thinks about the structure of his book, that was just awesome for me.
Yeah.
I could listen to that over and over again and take new things away from it, because there's always new things you can take from conversations like that when you have to listen to it a couple of months. Yeah.
It's almost like we're walking up this mountain, right? And I always tell people, like, have you ever noticed you'll read a book second time or watch a movie a second time, and it's almost like, how did I miss that? Or it's not that it's almost like we choose to hear what we want to hear. So when you're walking up a mountain, the view is constantly changing. Yeah. Even though you're looking at the same thing, but every time you're like a little bit higher, so the view is now different. It's almost kind of the same thing. I listen back to some of my interviews too, and I'm like, how did I miss that one? that was a golden show right there. How did I miss that? Okay, so let me ask you this final question, and we'll see where this takes us. There's that famous cliche: "If I only knew then what I know now." Yeah. So what's something that where you are today, like you wish you would have known, 10, 15 years ago, let's say?
Oh, wow. 10, 15 years ago. So where does that put me?
Or whatever, as you grew up, you're like, God, I wish I only knew this, 10, 15 years ago.
Well, there's a lot of things, but I think the first thing is trust your instincts.
I love that.
Trust your instincts. I think if we learn to trust them early enough, they're like a signal, like a signaling system. You mentioned you have 2 young kids. They have their own intuition. They have their own sense of what's right, what's wrong. And when they're able to cultivate it at a very young age, it does incredible things for them as they move on. You think about someone like Warren Buffett, somebody who's honed their ability to invest for decades. If you start when you're 4 or 5, that process gets sped up.
Yeah.
And so trust your instincts is a good one. Learn how to make good friends.
Learn how to make good friends. That's a first. I like that.
Learn how to recognize and cultivate friendship. It is the strongest indicator of happiness, of wealth, of well-being in life. And more people chase frivolous things and not, to me, one of my deepest values is friendship. To be able to stand by your friends, to be able to help them, to be able to be supported, because we're wired for connection.
Yes.
We're wired for bonding.
Yes.
And the better we do it, the happier we are.
Yeah.
Just the way it is.
Brilliant.
Brilliant. That would be about meditate more.
Meditate more.
Yeah.
Someone just told me the other day, like, I don't believe in meditation. I'm like, I don't even understand what that, like, like when you hear a line and your brain just kind of has that like screeching halt moment. It's like, what did, like, it just didn't even make sense. I was like, What's not to like? I don't even understand what's not to believe in.
Yeah, it's true. It's just people's personal experience, right?
Yeah. Well, there's a bunch of weirdos out there.
Yeah, it's true.
I'm one of them.
Yeah.
Awesome. So UJ, where can people find you? Where can people connect with you? How do people get in touch with you?
They can find me on my blog, ujramdas.com.
Okay.
They can find my journal at fiveyearjournal.com. And it's the best way to get a hold of me. If you want to follow my podcast, it's iTunes, The Mental Edge. You can either search for UJ Ramdas or The Mental Edge. You'll get both. And that's about it. It's great. I look forward to connecting with your audience. This has been fun.
Awesome. Yeah, so, same here. It's been great. I really, it's interesting. Sometimes my dad actually tells me this, and he listens to these podcasts all the time. He's like addicted.
That's great.
Which is amazing. But he goes, sometimes your interviews are more like interviews, and sometimes they're more like conversations. And I actually enjoy these when they're more like conversations. Yeah. And it's just like mind, like back and forth. They're my favorite. I just think, because then it's I think people learn from the process more than just like, here's my 7 questions, UJ. Please answer the.
That's true. Let me reverse that question, because I love asking that question to other people.
Yeah.
So if you knew what you knew now, if you knew that 15 years ago, well, what would you tell yourself?
What would I do? So it's interesting. Yeah. I've done this like a whole bunch of times. No one's actually asked me the question.
I'm just curious, man. I want to
know. Like you said, there are a lot. I think the biggest thing for me is following what you're passionate about and mastering it. My previous job, I was in commercial real estate, and I was really good at sales and like really helped the company grow, et cetera.
Yeah.
But now doing what I do, I pursue education and I pursue mastery in areas that I'm passionate about. Like there's not enough time in the day for me to fill my brain with the information that's out there. Whereas before, I was just fucking lazy, sitting on my desk. People would call, I'd close deals. I didn't try to learn, get better at sales. I didn't read nothing.
Yeah.
I was just kind of like, I got this. And now it's interesting. Like the more I know, the more I realize I know nothing. And so I wish I had that hunger and desire like I do now 10, 15 years ago, because I can't even think where I would be today if I was just rabid about if I mastered speed reading and then was able to knock out a book a week. Like the people that I speak to, the most impressive ones are the ones that are just, they read, they educate, they just a wealth of knowledge. And I just wish that, to me, is like my biggest regret, that I didn't get that seed planted much, much earlier.
You know what? You brought up something that is actually something else that I wanted to mention about what I would tell myself. It was 10, 15 years younger than I actually was. And this really sums it up. It's, combines all the other advice. It's never compromise the best version of you.
Damn right.
It's never compromise.
Yes.
Never read that thought can never come into your mind. If there is a thought that that you can better yourself with, you have no excuse not to take that action. None.
Yep.
Zero.
Yep.
Because if you do, you're very metaphorically and physically sometimes shooting yourself.
Yeah.
In places you don't want to.
Yeah. Whether you know it now or not, you are shooting yourself. You may find the effect of it, 5, 10 years down the road, but you are. Yeah, I love that. Absolutely.
Never compromise.
That to me, maybe because when I was younger, I was cocky and a little bit of an asshole. That never happened. It was just this is what I want, and I went after it. So that was never an issue. But I just wish I did it with a little more class and a little more. I didn't have to fucking piss on people just to get what I wanted. But listen, I on the one hand, yes, I regret these things. So I think the question is almost kind of a little strange, because I would much rather know this now then have that same conversation 20 years from now.
For sure.
So I think it's always good to also give ourselves credit in the sense of, we're us relatively young, but that for anyone, it's like when you learn that lesson, just thank God that you learned it now and you didn't have to wait another 15, 20 years. So I'm passionately obsessed with what I do and helping the people that we do. And I'm sure you are as well. And it's what fires us up and gets us out of bed,
Yes.
UJ, absolute blast. Seriously, thank you so much. This
was fun. This was fun.
Great. I mean, I got goosebumps a bunch of times. that rarely happens on these calls. It was fantastic. And I will post for everyone on satoriprime.com/podcast. Just find the episode with UJ Ramdas, and there's a resource guide. I'll put all the ways to connect with him, links to his to the 5-Minute Journal, blog, and also your podcast. My friend, heal well. Come back to us soon.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you.
See each other soon.
Amazing. Bye.
Thank you for joining us on this week's Performance Enhancing Podcast. We've taken this pep talk and created a custom action guide so you know exactly what action steps to take now to grow your business. Just head over to satoriprime.com/podcast and download it for free. Also, please leave a comment and rate this podcast on iTunes. It'll help us get the word out. Thanks for listening. Now, go and implement. We'll see you next time.